organizations that you've been involved in. And think about all of the different aspects of it. Everything that you think about and that you and your coworkers or friends or what have you, you're always having shared understanding and shared meaning. You understand something in that culture or in that organization that outsiders might not understand. So I think this definition is pretty relevant to what organizational culture is. When I was reading through the chapter, I decided to choose 4 purposes of culture. And you might find some that I missed, or you might not think that these are applicable. And that's one really helpful thing to do as I go through this, is critique them yourself. See if you think these match organizational culture. The first one that I found, the purpose of cultures, is that cultures offer an interpretation of an institution's history that members can use to decipher how they will be expected to behave in the future. And I always think about this when I'm talking to my history friends that are history majors. I don't know if any of you are in history or have friends that are in history, but they always say, God, can't we just learn from the past? And they're talking about probably governmental policies and procedures and practices. But they always say, why can't we just learn from the past? Because then all this stuff wouldn't be happening in the future. Why can't we just learn from our history books and then we wouldn't have to repeat it in the future? And that's basically what this is saying, that cultures are offering an interpretation of the institution's history so that you can know how to behave for the future. Okay? The second one that I found is that cultures can generate commitment to corporate values or management philosophy so that employees feel they are working for something they believe in. And this seems like, no duh, I wouldn't work at an organization or be in an organization unless I believed in what they were doing. And I think all of us feel the same way. We wouldn't be involved in a situation unless we took ownership in it. We were a part of the situation. And that's what a culture does, is it helps us adhere to what's going on and makes us feel a part of that organization in order that we feel like we're moving forward in some sense. And so that's what it's talking about. It's a commitment to the values of the organization and the philosophy of the organization. An example of this is if those of you who are on campus and living in living groups or in the Greek fraternities or sororities, this is really applicable because it's all about the philosophy and the values that have been passed down. And it's something that you believe in. You believe in what the Greeks believe in or what that living group believes in. And you're willing to strive to go forward with them. So that's why you become a member and initiate. The third reason or purpose of organizational cultures is it serves as organizational control mechanisms, informally approving or prohibiting some patterns of behaviors. And I'll give a couple examples of this in a little bit, but a lot of times when we're looking at organizational control mechanisms, a lot of times those are in forms of stories or rituals that you find in organizations. You kind of enter an organization and the culture is already established and you just kind of fall into what they are. To go back to the fraternities and sororities, if that's what you're involved in, they already have chapter, they already do rush, they already have all these policies and procedures, and you just kind of fit into it, adding to it, but going along with what they already have. And then you also learn very quickly what you can do and what you can't do, what's accepted in the organization and what's not. Number 4 is some types of organizational cultures are associated with greater productivity and profitability. If this area interests you at all, the organizational cultural area, this number 4 is a fun, interesting area to study. Scholars have found that there are certain assets and competencies within certain organizations that help with the productivity and the profitability of organizations. So you can actually study what these assets or skills are that are incorporated within the culture so to help your organization become more productive and become more profitable. Well, now that we know the purpose of organizational culture, let's look at what Gertz and Pakanowski say within their text in chapter 21 about cultural organizations. What I did is just took certain quotes from them, and then I'll interpret what I think they mean, and you at the same time interpret what you think they mean and analyze how they apply to your life. The first one is, you must experience an organization's culture to become intimately familiar with it. And I think this is really apparent. What they mean here is that it's hard to just observe from the outside and then come in and think that you know it all. I think a good example of this is being a student in school. We learn a lot of theory, especially in this class, but in all of our classes we learn a lot of theory. We learn how things are done, why they're done, but a lot of times we don't actually do the activity. So say this summer you get an internship, or you graduate and you actually get a job within your discipline, and you actually apply what you've been learning through your academic career. This is exactly what Gertz and Pakanowski are meaning, is that now you're able to experience that culture. You're not just looking at it from the outside and learning about the theory, but you're actually experiencing it and involved with it. And they think that that is when you really know the organization. The next quote is, analysis of corporate culture requires interpretation as well as observation. So now we're not just looking at the corporate culture, but we're analyzing it and assessing it. And if you assess it, you don't want to just look at the statistics of the organization. You don't want to say, well, they like to go to the water cooler this many times, or they really have meetings about 3 times a week. I mean, those things help, but to really assess the organizational culture, you need to go beyond that, and you need to listen to their dialogue and really listen to what they're saying. Gertz and Pakanowski say that the meanings are really embedded in what people say and what people do, rather than just counting statistics. And so that's what this is meaning. Observation is beyond interpretation of statistics. The third quote is, rituals articulate multiple aspects of cultural life. And all of us know this. When you go into an organization, there's always those hidden rituals that kind of take a little while to emerge, but soon you figure out what they are and you just go along with them. And the thing that Gertz and Pakanowski say is that it's very difficult to change those rituals if they're already established within the organizational culture. And if you do try to change those, you will be met with a lot of resistance with the people that are already doing them. Let me give you an example. I worked at Intel as an internship when I was doing my master's degree. And one of the things that I didn't realize at first is that my department met downstairs for coffee every morning for half an hour. And I caught on after a while, because it took me a second, but once I caught on and I was down there, some days it was very, very good to be down there. We would talk about what we had planned for that day, what our objectives were, what kind of goals we were going to meet, what kind of output we would have, and it would keep us accountable because we were telling each other what was going on with that workday. Other days, we would just sit there and talk about our weekend and what happened with our husbands and how our kids were and all these other things. And I was thinking, you know what? I could be upstairs working instead of jibber-jabbering with these people. But I didn't dare leave because I understood that that was a ritual that you do every morning. You're not late and you have coffee for some odd reason. And I wasn't about to change that because they had been doing it well before I joined the organization. And I knew that if I changed my ways, I would be met with a lot of resistance with my department members. So that kind of gives you an idea. The next quote that Gertz and Pakanowski say in Griffin's book is, metaphors can offer the ethnographer a starting place for assessing the shared meaning of corporate culture. Metaphors can offer the ethnographer a starting place for assessing the shared meaning of corporate culture. I love people who talk in metaphors and analogy. Matter of fact, Dr. Walker has an amazing ability of doing this, I think. And I hope that you guys have had the opportunity to hear his metaphors and his stories and